is real. People have been sold a lie. They believe that when the right person arrives, everything will magically fall into place, that love will be effortless, that they will be that their heart will just know. But the truth is, the moment you meet the person you're meant to build a life with, you won't feel complete clarity, you'll feel conflicted. Because deep down you'll realize that this relationship is not here to validate you, it's here to refine you. So the real question is this: why do so many people struggle in relationships? Why do they run when things get difficult? Why do they sabotage love before it even begins? Is it because they keep meeting the wrong person? Or is it because they themselves have never become right? Most people spend their lives waiting for the perfect person to appear, waiting for a sign from God, waiting for the stars to align. And while they wait, they do nothing, they remain unchanged. But let me tell you something. God's timing is not about waiting. It's about becoming. Imagine this. You're praying for love, but deep down, you don't even believe you're worthy of it. You say you want a partner of strength, wisdom, and character, but you haven't cultivated those qualities in yourself. And then one day, someone steps into your life, someone different, someone who challenges you, who sees through your excuses, who refuses to tolerate your mediocrity. And instead of embracing them, what do? You panic, you hesitate, you walk away, and you call it a sign. You tell yourself, if it were meant to be, it would be easy. But that's not true. The right person will not always feel comfortable. They will not fit neatly into your existing world because they were sent to elevate you, to pull you up to a higher standard. And growth is painful. So here's the real test. Will you recognize them? Or will you push them away because they don't match your fantasy of effortless love? Because make no mistake, God is not sending you someone to complete you. He is sending you someone to challenge you. And if you are not prepared, if you have not done the work, if you are still looking for comfort instead of transformation, you will walk away from the very person you were meant to build a life with. And that will not be fate's fault. That will be yours. People don't fail in relationships because they're unlucky. They fail because they are unprepared. They fail because they have built their expectations on fantasies rather than reality. And worst of all, they fail because they think love is something that happens to them instead of something that demands something from them. So let's get to the core of it. Why do so many people struggle in relationships? Is it just bad luck? Is it fate playing some cruel joke? Or is it something deeper, something far more uncomfortable to admit? Maybe, just maybe, your struggles in love aren't about other people. Maybe they are a reflection of you. There's a young man I once spoke to, a man frustrated with life, frustrated with love. He told me he had prayed for years to meet the right woman. He believed he had done everything right. He was kind, he was patient, and he was waiting for God to send him someone special. And yet, nothing happened. No doors opened. No divine connection. He watched others get married, move on, build lives together while he remained stuck, convinced that he had been forgotten. But the truth? He hadn't been forgotten. He had been avoided. Because while he was waiting, he wasn't building himself into someone worth choosing. He was so focused on receiving love that he never thought about what it demands of him. He wanted a strong woman, but had no strength himself. He wanted a partner of wisdom, yet he had no discipline in his own life. He wanted someone who would love him unconditionally, but he had no real identity to offer in return. And so he waited and waited, and eventually his waiting turned to bitterness. He resented the world, resented women, resented God, and all the while he refused to see the truth staring him in the face. He wasn't single because God was withholding something from him. He was single because he wasn't ready to receive what he was asking for. This is the problem with so many people today. They chase after relationships out of desperation, and desperation is the fastest way to ensure you attract the wrong people. Because when you are desperate, you are willing to settle for anything. And if you are willing to settle for anything, what does that say about you? You see, people think attraction is about luck, about timing, about finding the right person at the right moment. But attraction, real attraction, is built on competence. on self-respect, on becoming someone who commands the kind of relationship they desire, not just hopes for it. And here's the hardest truth of all. Marriage is not a reward handed to you. It is a burden you must be ready to carry. It is a test of character. It is a demand placed on your very being. And if you are not prepared for it, you will destroy it. Because a relationship, especially one ordained by God, is not about comfort. It is about sacrifice. It is about responsibility. And if you are still waiting for someone to come into your life and complete you, you have already lost the battle. So let me ask you, are you waiting or are you preparing? Are you sitting around hoping for love to fix you? Or are you actively fixing yourself so that when the right person arrives, you don't ruin what was meant for you? Because the worst thing that can happen to a man or a woman is not that they stay single, it's that they meet the right person at the wrong time, and because they weren't ready, they lose them. So stop waiting, stop chasing, stop hoping for a miracle that requires nothing from you. Instead, become the kind of person who naturally attracts the love you desire. Because when you finally meet the right person, it won't be about whether or not they choose you. It will be about whether or not you have become someone worth choosing. You think love is supposed to just happen to you. That one day, by some stroke of divine fate, the right person will walk into your life and everything will fall into place. But that's a lie. Love, real love, isn't about waiting. It's about preparation. And most people are completely unprepared for the very thing they say they want. So let's ask the question, why do so many people struggle in relationships? Why do they keep falling for the wrong person? Why do they end up in situations that drain them, that confuse them, that leave them feeling used and abandoned? Is it just bad luck? Or is it something far more unsettling? Maybe, just maybe, your struggles in love have less to do with fate and more to do with your character. Maybe they are a reflection of who you are and what you've prioritized. Maybe they are the natural consequence of the way you've been living. There was a woman I once spoke to, brilliant, educated, had everything going for her on paper, but her relationships, a disaster. She had spent years chasing after men who had no intention of committing to her. She believed that if she just loved them enough, if she just gave more of herself, eventually someone would see her worth, but they never did. And so she became bitter, angry. She started blaming men. She started blaming God. She started convincing herself that love simply wasn't in the cards for her, that all the good ones were taken, that she had somehow been forgotten. But here's what she refused to see. It wasn't that love had abandoned her. It was that she had been choosing the wrong kind of love over and over again. And worse, she had done nothing to prepare herself for the kind of relationship she truly wanted. See, this is the brutal truth no one wants to hear. Desperation is self-destructive. It clouds your judgment. It blinds you to reality. When you are desperate for love, you will settle for anything that gives you even the illusion of it. And when you settle for anything, you end up with nothing. Attraction, real attraction, is not about luck. It's not about magic. It's about competence. It's about self-respect. It's about becoming someone who has earned the right to be in a relationship of depth and value. Because marriage is not a reward, it is a burden. It is the single most difficult thing two people can embark upon. It requires discipline, it requires sacrifice. It requires a level of responsibility that most people are not ready for. And that's why so many relationships collapse. Because people think love is about them, about what they can get, about what the other person owes them. They don't stop to ask what love demands of them. So let me ask you, are you ready? Not just for the wedding, not just for the feeling of being wanted, but for the weight of what a real relationship requires. Have you disciplined your mind? Have you learned to control your emotions? Have you built a life worth sharing with someone else? Or are you waiting, hoping, passively expecting love to fix the very things in you that you refuse to confront? Because the worst thing that can happen to you isn't that you stay single, it's that you meet the right person and lose them because you weren't ready. So stop waiting, stop chasing, stop hoping for love to come and save you. Become someone who doesn't just attract love, but who deserves it. Because when you finally meet the right person, it won't be about whether or not they choose you. It will be about whether you have become someone worth choosing. You tell yourself that when the right person comes along, everything will make sense, that love will be easy, that it will feel like destiny, that all the chaos and heartbreak will suddenly justify itself. But that's not how it works. Love doesn't fix confusion, it reveals it. It doesn't erase your fears, it exposes them. And if you're not ready, if you haven't done the work, if you haven't built yourself into someone capable of sustaining a meaningful relationship, then meeting the one won't feel like a dream come true. It'll feel like a threat. So let's ask the real question. Why do so many people struggle in relationships? Why do they find themselves stuck in toxic cycles, chasing people who don't value them, sabotaging the very things they say they want? Is it all just a matter of fate, or is it a mirror reflecting back the choices they've made, the things they've refused to confront in themselves? There was a man I once knew, intelligent, ambitious, charismatic. He had a long list of what he wanted in a wife. He would talk about it often, saying that when he finally met her, he would be ready to settle down. But in the meantime, he filled his life with distractions. He indulged every impulse. He avoided responsibility. He entertained shallow relationships because they were easy, because they asked nothing of him. And then one day, he met her. She was everything he had said he wanted. But when he stood in front of her, when it was time to show up as the man he claimed to be, he realized something terrifying. He wasn't ready. See, this is the part no one talks about. We romanticize the idea of finding the one, but we rarely talk about what happens after that moment. Because if you haven't built the discipline, if you haven't cultivated the strength, if you haven't developed the integrity to sustain a relationship of depth, then when the right person arrives, they won't complete you, they'll expose you. And this is where most people fail, because desperation doesn't lead to love, it leads to self-destruction. The more you need someone to complete you, the more you will cling, the more you will suffocate, the more you will compromise your values in a desperate attempt to keep them. But here's the truth. Attraction, real, lasting attraction, isn't built on need. It's built on competence. It's built on self-respect. It's built on becoming someone of substance. Because marriage is not a reward. It is not something handed to you when you've suffered enough. It is a responsibility, and it will demand everything from you. It requires emotional discipline. It requires patience. It requires the ability to communicate when it's hard, to sacrifice when it's necessary, to choose love even when you don't feel it. And if you are not prepared for that weight, you will drop it. So stop believing that love will come and save you. It won't. It will test you. It will demand that you rise to meet it. The real question is, will you be ready? Because the worst tragedy isn't that you never meet the right person. The real tragedy is meeting them and realizing that you are too small, too unprepared, too undisciplined to keep them. So stop waiting. Stop chasing. Stop looking for someone to complete you. Build yourself. Challenge yourself. Become someone who doesn't just attract love but deserves it. Because when the moment comes, and it will, you won't get a second chance to be ready. You don't get love by wishing for it. You don't build a relationship by hoping it falls into place. And you sure as hell don't deserve commitment just because you're lonely. Love, real, profound, enduring love, is the result of responsibility, of discipline, of the willingness to transform yourself into someone capable of carrying its weight. So ask yourself, are you that person? Or are you waiting for fate to deliver something you haven't prepared for? Waiting for someone to see past your flaws while you refuse to correct them? Waiting for love to fix you when the truth is you were never supposed to show up broken? Enough with the waiting, enough with the desperation, enough with chasing people who validate your insecurities instead of confronting them. Enough. If you want love, earn it. If you want commitment, prove you can sustain it. If you want a relationship of value, become a person of value. Not tomorrow, not next year, now. Because life doesn't wait. The right person doesn't wait. And if you are not ready when they come, they will walk away. And when they do, you won't be able to blame fate. You only have yourself to answer to.